All right. Welcome everybody to the Finance and Admin Committee for November 2025. Today is Tuesday, the 18th. We are
Strong start.
and we are here safely in our day seats. I guess we'll start with roll call. Spencer Irwin.
Teresa Nielsen, Councilor Nielsen. I forget my name.
Christopher Warren, Mayor.
Chris Workman, City Manager.
Mike Merzinski, Finance Director.
And yes, it's time for public comment.
Nobody signed up ahead of time and nobody's in the audience.
I don't see anybody. Nobody signed up. So did everybody have a chance to look at the minute? Did everybody feel comfortable with accepting the minutes as they're written?
I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes from the September 15th, 2025.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
The minutes. And we are moving on to new business. First one is a financial policy discussion and potential adoption. Somebody prepared to talk about that?
Mr. Brzezinski's got
I think it could be this one. This particular policy in front of the committee is the fund balance, contingency, and reserve policy, and also introduction to a reserve fund policy that we're going to have to be part of it. This is part of your strategic plan, one of our bullets that we have to do or we set aside to do. It's a good policy to have. This will provide us guidance to the staff, budget review committee, and council. We'll set the limits on how much we set aside. Chris likes to have 42%, but this will break that 42% out. But we'll go through that later. But we've got the unappropriated ending fund balance. Everybody's familiar with that. Then we have the reserve for future expenditures, a new one. That is a new line item. We can use it or we can not use it. We don't have to use it. It's one of those. They introduced it about 5 years ago. Not everybody uses it, but it's basically a savings fund. You set a line item aside. Say we're going to buy a fire truck or something. We're going to put 100,000 into it each year. That line item will sit there each year and just grow until we use it. But it'll be set in the reserve fund. It won't be in the general fund. It'll be over in the reserve fund. So that's where the reserve fund comes in. That money can be spent, unappropriated can only be spent within an emergency, where the reserve for future expenditures, if a need arises and it's, council deems this emergency, we can spend it with the supplemental budget. Everything takes a supplemental budget to spend, if it's in these two line items. And the contingencies also, you're familiar with contingency, that's our money that is kind of set aside. We don't know if we need to spend money, if we got a particular item that we want to buy. We're not sure. Going into the budget, we kind of put it over in contingency. We pull it and need it. And then the reserve fund, something new, and really not new. This one's been around for quite a few years. We do the LBE fund, the land building equipment, is the construction in a reserve fund. We need to split that out. The auditors have been talking to me for the last 2 years that we need to split it out. We'll probably start splitting that out. It's going to take time. This one's not easy to just pull apart, and like we did with the SDCs a couple of years ago. So it's going to take a little bit of time. Now, this particular fund, it's going to be reviewed right when the governing body will approve this when we set up the budget, or we should probably bring a resolution when we set up the fund. That way we have it in the paperwork. And then every 10 years, council will review it as part of the budget committee, and then as part of a resolution revision. Should it be continued or abolished? That's just a new rule. It's been out quite a few, like 10 years, but it's something we have to follow. So we're going to switch over to the policy. We're gonna talk about something.
Like, any questions
Oh,
on
right, sorry. Any questions?
the, before we jump into the policy? Kind of more just general overview and.
Right,
So the reserve is essentially will, like, word escaped me, will, end up kind of being a differentiated, like similar to the LBE, but
Yeah.
not necessarily just land building equipment stuff, and can be just,
it'll probably be just, for our vehicles, pull them completely out and any, for like the library, we're putting money aside for the library, that type of stuff where we're saying, it's a reserve.
yeah.
We're gonna reserve. Construction will go into, still be in the LDE, we'll move money into it and we'll.
And they accrue they're like an accrual, like we would just every year or whatever. but-
Whatever we do, right, every budget year, we'll put money into it, we'll review it and put money into it. The reserve will be for equipment, basically the equipment. And probably our computers and vehicles and so on. Construction will still be in, we'll come up with a different name. I think LBE is gonna go away. I haven't really thought about a name yet, we'll get there.
I think that would make sense to me, otherwise
So you're saying like we're splitting up like rolling like equipment versus like permanent sort, is that?
What was that one?
How, I'm just trying to understand how we're splitting it up. Like,
Okay.
so like vehicles and stuff go in one category and then buildings and land
Right,
goes in another.
for like example, the water treatment
Yeah,
plant.
okay.
I'll put all that into the LBE by itself, and we got all the funding sitting there waiting for that project.
Right,
And then for the vehicles that we're setting aside, that we have on our schedule,
yeah,
will be over in that reserve,
okay,
okay? We're gonna
Okay.
pull them apart so we can see, you see them easier.
okay,
And then, we've got road projects coming up, we'll move the money over there. And if any money's left, we move it back, it's easier to see it that way.
and so the new fund where like the water treatment plant will go, would that be in the RFE or would that would be?
That will be a construction fund. It will just be a regular special revenue fund.
Okay.
It'll be a construction fund. And if we, coming down the pipe, we may have to split that out to governmental versus proprietary. I hope we don't have to do that. I'd rather just get rid of it. Because that's what we had to do with the SDCs. We had to split those up. Does that help you out, Mayor? Mr. Mayor?
Maybe I'm just confused what the reserve for future expenditure.
Well, it's, for the best example is to look at, we're gonna buy a sweeper.
Right,
And
okay,
Right now, we probably have about 400,000 sitting in there. Take that 400,000, put it over here in its own line item.
yeah,
You'll see that on the budget. And then each year we'll put another 100,000, 50,000, whatever
Yeah,
we
sure.
decide. And we'll keep that running every year.
okay,
It's over here by itself. Right now, it's kind of grouped together in a bundle.
right, okay, so then each existing line item would become its own.
World, yeah.
Okay.
It'll be, it's all by itself.
So organizationally, it's going to be easier to just look at things and see what they're allotted and have the money separate to make that accountability
but they're
easier.
line items in a single reserve fund, right? Or, yeah, so that, but the policy
Okay.
applies to the reserve fund, but it'll be more delineated
Yeah.
and easier to deal with than just.
It makes sense as far as organization-wise and clarity.
Yeah.
It's more transparent.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what I think as well. Right.
Uh,
The consensus is get something a little bigger, a little more space. We carpool the conferences.
Yeah, okay,
But once you see it in action, you'll go, oh, okay, I see it.
okay, no, I think I just misunderstood.
Now, the calculate, there's two things we have to do is we have to calculate the balances, each one of those, and there's simple formulas. It's in the policy. Quick Crystal set up a new policy form, and she did a very good job of setting up the formulas, except there's one translation issue on each one of them. For the unappropriated, that's the expenditure, this thing y'all are used to. Expenditures without the transfers times the percentage we'll talk about. General operating is total expenditures minus transfers minus ending fund balance times the percentage, that's our contingency. I already have these built into the spreadsheets. We've been operating on them since we've been here, we just have not set the policy. Reserve for future expenditures is basically everything left over after the calculation for general operating contingency. So that's how we do the calculations. On the policy that you have there, it has that, it looks like a letter I or something.
Yeah.
That should be a minus sign.
Oh, okay, I was very confused by
Yeah,
that.
trust me, I saw
Is it
that.
Gaelic?
Yeah, I think my math, I was like.
That should be a minus.
Dot
Every one of those
Tuesday.
I's or whatever that is, with a minus sign.
Gotcha, so it's total expenditures without transfers minus
Minus
unappropriated ending fund balance times the percentage.
times percentage over on the
Gotcha,
page
okay.
that we'll talk about.
I thought that meant something else, but what is that? A short answer.
Yeah,
Acronym for.
Yeah,
And so, just to make sure I understand, so there's an unappropriated ending fund balance for each fund.
correct.
Right,
One
so-
for each fund, yes.
So for like the general operating contingency, like, so like for the fund for the street sweeper,
Mhm.
would that have,
Each fund has one of these.
okay,
They're separate from whatever we're talking about being the reserve items. The line items are separate. This will be down below that. For
right,
those particular type of funds, there's not much of a contingency that you built in for those. You can have, the percentages that we set up, Mr. Mayor, will be whatever we decide to.
right, okay,
Contingency or a reserve fund, you really don't have a contingency.
okay,
Okay, so these
right,
are,
that makes sense.
one of these, every fund can have one of these. Only
Okay,
one. But you don't have to have contingencies on a reserve fund because you're just setting money aside. Okay, so don't get too deep into that.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, it's not worth it.
I do have one question. Where did if that's all right?
yeah,
Okay. Where did the targeted percentages come from on 2.2? Where were those?
We're gonna talk about that.
Okay, all right.
Remember that the percentages here are from Newport.
Okay.
Now, I've got a new, we received the rate study final report today, we're going through it. And they came up with a.
Draft version.
Oh, yes, draft, they're very draft. They came up with different percentages and, yeah, the 10% general fund, unappropriated ending fund balance is, we can, council or the committee can set these rates, whatever you want to set them. Chris wanted 42% for general fund, which is a very good number. And so if you take the 10% plus the 4 plus the 28, that's our 42%.
oh, gotcha, okay.
So that's what I'm saying, that's how we get it. The self-supporting funds, that's everything but the general fund and the LBE. So they have a 12%, 10, and 20, I mean, there's a big number. But the RFE, we don't have to do, I mean.
Right, that's up to-
That's
yeah.
entirely up to council.
And that could be year by year. Okay,
Yeah, I mean,
okay.
this is not that, they say to use it, but
Sure,
it's
that makes
another line item, and it consolidates, when you see it in your budget, you're gonna see one number.
Right, right. So if I can,
Yeah.
just to make sure I'm understanding, so like if we had $100,000 in our general fund,
Mhm.
this is saying that ideally we would spend like 28, maybe up to $28,000 saving for future purchases.
Right,
We would have $4,000 of contingency, and then we'd leave $10,000 unspent. Is that, am I?
You're right on.
Okay, cool, okay.
Exactly how it works. And
Like,
that's what
yeah, we have more money than we needed.
Right, yeah, that
And
goes
plus-
into next year.
Yeah,
Okay,
and maybe we used or didn't use the contingency. and
Mm-hmm.
then we were
And
putting money aside for
For
our
a future project, that's
Yeah.
an identified project.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
that just disappear each year are the general contingency and the ending fund balance. They roll forward.
Right,
The RFE
right.
can roll forward by itself, or the budget committees and say, we want to take part of that and put it into this number here. You can do that the next year.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Okay.
we can do that. We won't do that this year. We'll do it probably the following year, once we get into those.
So like if we had $200,000 in the account for the street sweeper, but all of a sudden we want to buy a new parks truck or something,
You
the
can take
budget
it out of
committee
that.
could take 50,000 from the street
It's
sweeper. and
at
put
your
it into-
discretion.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
It's not like an endowment or something where you have to
No.
like, okay,
No,
okay.
this is your.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Your savings account.
Okay,
It's
okay,
set
okay.
aside for a particular item. And if the policy makers change.
Okay, okay.
You can do that.
Yeah, you're still restricted to that fund, right? Like
Right.
it's still have to stay
Right.
Yeah.
within street or.
Right,
keyword.
sure, yeah, yeah,
Right.
yeah.
But as long as you're within that fund, then it can move to different projects, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, and now what the RAF list came up with, they have a percentage for the RFP that goes from 25 to 42. And I went, whoa, that's big. But, that's what, but they put that against the self-supporting funds, not to the general fund. So I just wanted to throw that out there, so you'll see that when y'all get the final report.
okay.
Yeah, they came up with that today, and Chris said, you might want to bring that up tonight, so you can see that.
Big jump.
Yeah, so I mean, they're specific to water,
Right,
sewer and storm.
right.
Okay,
And again, it's still, I mean, this is, for general fund, we're looking at 8 to 28. On
Yeah.
theirs, they're recommending the 25, which is still the range, but up to 42. Again, depending on how big of a future project that you've got sitting
Yeah.
out there, right?
and
So,
do you have a sense of, like, at least it feels like to me, for our water or sewer funds, a big chunk of it is already going to future expenditure. Like, we're not spending, like, most of our sewer fund, or maybe we'll do water because we don't have the debt with water. Like, most of the water fund is being saved up and then spent on projects. Like, how much of a change would that be, I guess, is what I'm trying to figure out.
We're gonna see that next year. We won't see it in this year's budget. How much of a change will it make? I don't know.
Okay,
Until I really start crunching the numbers.
sure,
I mean, it depends on what council decides to do with the rate study.
yeah.
Um,
I guess I'm just trying to, because what we usually have like 1 point something million in the water
Yeah.
fund for you, and I feel like we're not spending 800,000 of that on salaries and consumables and stuff. We're spending most of it.
We spent a pretty good chunk of it, but part of it goes over to the reserve, to LBE,
Okay.
about 500,000.
Right, right,
So you
yeah.
got like 1.7, 500 goes
Right.
to 1.2 to keep operations going.
But so would that 500,000 that goes to LBE, would that now be the RFE piece here? Is that?
No,
Okay.
it will be a line item. So that's why we're pulling this stuff aside, you're pulling these numbers apart. That's gonna be an expenditure, that's a transfer, that's the transfer that you're talking about that goes over to the LBE. So in the calculation,
Oh, so they're, okay.
that's
okay.
without transfers, that's minus transfer.
Gotcha, okay.
So the transfers come out.
So, but then I guess it feels like if the only fund supported by transfer is LBE, wouldn't like 100% of the LBE be RFE?
Yes, pretty much.
So then why is our target 0 to 25% for that? Because
It's
like,
usually zero. I mean, it's a range that we put together, if we wanted to use it.
but I get like, it just, like, we do anything with funds supported by transfers, sides reserve those funds for future, like, I don't know, am I understanding that wrong?
Well, I'm not quite following where you want to go.
I'm just confused with, so we have funds supported by transfers.
Uh-huh.
Our target is to have 0 to 25% of our funds supported by transfers be reserved for future expenditures. But if the only fund supported by transfers is the land building and equipment fund, which inherently we 100% reserve for future expenditures,
Pretty much.
then in what world would we only reserve?
A lot of this
15?
stuff falls apart.
Okay, okay.
I-
I just want to make sure I wasn't missing something
yeah, you
there,
have to
okay.
subtract that off.
Yeah,
Okay,
everything,
okay.
you're right, Christopher.
Okay.
It's basically all that, 100%.
Okay, okay.
But yeah, that's the best way of looking at it. It's pretty much reserved for future expenditures. Or yeah,
So what we really have to decide then are those targeted percentages, if we're comfortable with what's presented here, or if we'll be comfortable, or if we want to adjust it according to the study. Is that correct?
yeah. I mean, the study is just another thing to look at.
Correct.
Another example.
Correct.
Did they give, examples or like, I get justification for their numbers, like,
We've got, the
Uh,
rate study,
yeah,
industry standards for
Inside
them.
industry standard.
okay.
And a lot of this is our industry standards too. I mean, 10% in fund balance for the general fund is a good number to have.
Yeah, I mean,
And the RFE, I mean, they still roll together. That's 38%. And, that's what we've always aimed for. But now they want us to split it out into this. We don't have to use RFE. We can just roll that whole 28% back into the ending fund balance. So RFE is optional, even though, the budget, our Oregon budget law wants us to use it. We don't have to use it. It's just something that I've shown. I have to kind of bring this out to you. I'll show it to you. So you're aware of it.
Yeah, I just need to understand what is better, is whether to go to the 28% or whether to recommend 42 or whatever it was that they were
Right.
saying. That's the piece that I have to understand and more clear as why the difference and what that should be. Because this is policy, which means if we decide this, it's stable until we change the policy, correct? It's not 1 year we're going to do 28 RFE and next year we're going to do 42 RFE and the next year we're going to do, it's going to be a policy. So that's going to be the set amount until we change it. Is that correct or is that
That
not?
is correct.
Okay.
Right, and we will report if we don't meet the goals, this will have to be reported as part of our message to the
Okay.
council.
Okay.
So that's written in there.
We wouldn't make the goal because of, help me, I'm sorry, but I don't understand why would we not meet the goal? If we said 28% RFE, how would we not meet that if that money was set aside?
If one of the numbers we could actually, these percentages could push it into a negative category.
Okay, that's something to consider then.
Yeah, I've seen that happen. It's happening usually in the self-supporting funds. In the general fund, very rarely happens, but the ones that are really close to the edge are the self-supporting, which is a proprietary, which is our water, sewer, and storm. Those three are always right on the edge, that we can only do a ending fund balance and a contingency, and we can't do a reserve for future because we've already transferred it out. It's already gone. So that it can go into a negative process.
Which we don't necessarily want to have a negative
You can have
line.
a negative
That's
line.
why I'm like, how we have a negative line?
Oh, boy,
Yeah, so we'd reduce the transfer. What we have traditionally done is we've had to reduce the transfer, so we don't have as much money
Okay.
moving over into LB&E because we don't have the money to transfer over, which means
Yeah.
we're not saving like we know we should be, but
But-
we also can't go backwards, right?
Right.
Right.
No. And, is it okay, one more question?
yeah,
How hard is a policy change on this? If I voted, not we, but if I voted that we want to not quite go, maybe keep it in the 28, 20 range rather than going 42, what's the difficulty in changing that if we find, we could really up that and save more next year? What's the difficulty in changing policy like that?
We just bring it to the council again as a revision. And we
Okay.
do a new resolution update, rescind the other one and make a new policy, changing the percentages. And that's every year we review the part of the budget package.
Okay, so that's doable and not so time consuming that
It's gonna
not
take
gonna-
us time to get used to it. I mean, because I've been trying to do it for the last 3 years, but I didn't really have a policy. So I didn't work too much.
Right, right.
The minute we put this in place, then I worry about it, then I
Right.
report to council and the budget committee and Chris, hey, we didn't make it, I've got to take it from here. And
I like the idea of it. I just don't want to make it so that we're always jangling with negative
well,
pieces and having
yeah,
that
no,
be,
and I think we're getting too deep into the weeds on that.
Okay.
Because it doesn't happen except for the self-supporting
Okay.
funds. And the reason it happens is just, we've taken so much money,
Right.
shipped it over, we just don't have enough to do a reserve. You've already sent your reserve.
right,
So
I understand that.
that goes away. And so you just try to meet your ending fund balance and your general operating contingencies. So it's,
Mike, aren't we gonna have the policy where it's got the range though, where it gives you some latitude? I mean, we're gonna have like, down to zero, I guess, or if we wanted to set a minimum, I guess would be the chance you would take, right? If you said a minimum of 8%, and then you get to a year where it's like, we can't even do the 8%, we'll be under. So maybe it's just an acknowledgement of it's gonna be from zero to up to so much, and then when we get to budget season,
yeah,
we're gonna look at where the numbers are for that year, and we're gonna come in and we're gonna identify what the RFE is for that budget year, based on what's available. The tricky part is it's kind of like, we're gonna save money for every dollar that we don't spend by the end of the month, we're gonna save it. Well, you'll spend it every month, right?
Yeah.
You really need to set up like, how much are we going to save each year?
Right.
And that's what we're gonna save, and then everything else we spend, right? So it really is just a mindset of planned savings. And for the last several years, we've got there on sewer. We've done a nice job, and we're consistently at $400,000 to $500,000 a year is going into sewer. Through LBE on water, it's like what's left over.
Right.
On storm, it's like what's left over. There's
Yeah.
nothing left over. So it's if there's something left over, then we drop it over there, but we're not kind of planning ahead of time to do it. And this came up Saturday a little bit. I mean, we could plan to put nothing towards those future expenses and nothing into these reserve accounts. That would definitely lower the amount of money we have to charge for utility rates today. But then when we do need to spend that money, now we're having to borrow it at an expense of having to borrow money,
Yeah.
which makes those projects cost more. And so there is a cost to not saving, or there's a savings by, putting money aside every year towards those bigger expenses. And there's no right or wrong, there's just consequences based on what we
Right.
want to do. And we've always taken, the city, has always been pretty good at putting money aside towards future expenses so that when
Yes.
it comes time, even if you don't have all the money saved up, you've got a big chunk of that money saved up, so you can apply for grants and have a match, or you can, put the majority of it down and maybe borrow for a year or two and have it paid off that much sooner. So, staying out of debt is a big deal. There's times when you have to go into debt to get a project completed, but you don't want to do any more than you have to.
Right.
And this is forced savings, essentially.
this helps do that, right? Chris is right.
So would there,
Yeah.
so would there be any reason for,
I mean,
is there a reason it has to be zero for self-supporting funds and funds supported by transfers for the RFE, or could we be like 5% to 25%? Is there a reason it's zero? Is what I need to know.
Zero means you don't use it,
Right.
basically. Yeah.
Okay,
That's the only reason why. If you put the 5 in there, then that's our.
that's
where
your
we
goal. You're
start.
gonna start at
That's our
5.
base.
And is there a reason we wouldn't have a percentage to start at so that it would make us put aside for funds supported by transfers, or? That's what I just need to know.
Only if we didn't want to raise rates in order to cover the
5%.
savings amount for savings.
Okay.
Right. So if it was more important to keep rates where they were or not do an increase or not increase them as much, that would be the reason why, right?
Okay.
But if the policy is we are going to save, which
Right.
means we're going to raise those rates enough so that we can force ourselves to have savings, then we'll always hit that 5 or 8 or whatever that minimum is, right? So it's where you're starting
Yeah.
from. Do you want to assume 0, or do you want to assume 5, or do you want to assume 8, or?
I kind of like the idea of having it be something other than 0 as a starting. I think the savings, I'm not saying I want to raise rates, or I think we need to do that, but I do think savings and planning for the future is important. And maybe it could be something, maybe it doesn't have to be 8, maybe it could just be 5, or
Yeah,
something,
one,
or just something, or 3, or something.
Whatever you-
But that's just my personal opinion. I think the savings, I'm a personal saver, and I think sometimes rainy days come and it's nice to have something.
Yeah, I'm just, I'm something's not clicking for me.
That's
Not RFPs at the.
Yeah, I just understand the RFE piece with relation to, man, like, what are we saving for with RFEs in self-supporting funds? It feels like most of the things we would be saving for would be in transfers to like self-supported funds.
right.
Or excuse me, into funds supported by transfers. Like, I just, I don't know what the RFEs are supposed to be in, like, the water fund. Because it feels like the water treatment plant, the water trucks, the water, like, all of that would be in a transfer fund, right?
Right.
So I guess I just feel like something's not clicking for me there about why we would ever have RFEs in self-supporting funds.
Yeah.
If we're just transferring everything to,
It's for emergencies. It's for things that we don't,
but wouldn't that be
projects we don't
contingency?
plan.
Yeah, because RFEs I thought had to be.
They have a contingency goes away every year. RFE grows over
It will
time.
go every year.
Okay,
So
but I thought
contingency.
RFPs had to be for a specific project, not like just for extra money RFP.
And that's what it's gonna be usually for one.
Sometimes that
And you
way.
can do that,
It's
you can
not,
have it.
well, I don't think that when you put money into the RFE, are we assigning it to a specific project?
Initially, yes, and then you start adding to it if you have more projects you want to set aside or wait for. And you don't need to use this, that's why
Right, because I guess it just feels like
Yeah.
to me, like the way we've structured our
we can
budget
scratch it from this.
is that we
point.
don't do RFEs, and then we do one giant RFE fund, which is land building and equipment. So just, I guess I'm trying to think about what a RFE would be that we would put in, like
I
general
would-
fund or self-supporting.
I would suggest that we just scratch it from the self-supporting, so it's not confusing.
Okay, I think that makes sense.
It's one of those ones you don't need, you can use it or you don't need to use.
But that, and then I guess my thing, if we're gonna scratch it from self-supporting funds, can we then boost funds supported by transfers to read that the RFE is like 90% or something? 'Cause isn't that more like what?
That would be, that. Okay, for that particular fund, we probably don't need to have one of those. Same for the self-supporting, we probably don't need it for those two. We just-
Okay, just
maybe
for
the
general.
General
fund.
fund,
Okay,
we can just.
that
leave
makes
it there.
sense.
If that'll, because that might save the confusion, because it is a weird line item for me too.
Yeah, okay.
So you're talking about scratching the self-supporting funds and the funds supported by transfers, the
Yep.
RFE,
We'll
Yeah.
scratch those both right there.
and then increasing the RFE for general fund.
No,
No.
No, leave that just like it is.
Okay.
I mean,
just because I think like the point, like for me, funds supported by transfers is all one giant savings account for us, basically. So there's no reason to have savings in our other, like, it'd be like using like you have a savings account and a checking account, and you want to always keep 20% savings in your checking account, but you also have your savings, you just move it to your savings account kind of thing, you know what
Yeah.
I'm saying? Like, just use the checking for checking and use the savings for savings, but you don't need to like always have $500 available in your, well, I guess that's bad, maybe more than that. You don't need to always have $2,000 available in your checking account, just in case. Like, no, that's what the
Savings
savings account is for. And then if you need the extra $2,000, you just move it from
back.
savings. But yeah, I feel like that's probably a crude example or an oversimplification, but.
right.
Yeah, and I think some of that, and Mike knows this better than I do, so I'll talk and have him correct me. I think some of it is on what level of permission you need in order to get to and spend the money.
Sure.
So, if it's built into that, my understanding, if it's built to the RFE, it's budgeted, it's money that's there, it's already in the budget to spend that money, right? So it's like being in the land building equipment fund currently,
Right,
and we've
right.
got a project and it's got X amount of money, we're gonna do that project and spend that money, or we're not gonna do the project and the money will
You
just
don't
sit there and grow the next
Get
year.
approval.
There's nothing, versus your contingency money is for unforeseen circumstances, right? You want to have money there, but it's for money that you're not setting aside for a specific thing. And if we have to tap into contingency, that's a resolution that we have to pass, the council has to pass in order to authorize us to use that funding for that specific thing. So,
Right.
Is that a big deal to have to go and pass a resolution, whatever? Usually not, but maybe it's a contingent project or something. So I guess that's really the only distinction I would make, and if that's not a big concern, then
No.
it's not a big concern.
It's not.
When would we do something? Because like, that would already be the case right now, right? Like if we needed to move a bunch of money from building equipment to something else, like that wouldn't, that's not a new thing, right? I feel like I'm,
No, but where are you going with that one? I don't know.
well, I'm just, with Chris's example of like, the council has to adopt a resolution to that.
To spend
That's
the
a contingency note.
To spend
But-
contingency.
oh, sorry, okay, yeah.
That's a
Yeah.
contingency note.
But I guess,
To spend RFE money, you don't have to do anything. It's already budgeted as RFE money assigned to a multiple specific.
So maybe, I guess I'm wondering, would that, like on the self-supporting funds, would we just have RFPs that relate to things that are currently in the LBE? And then
No, you wouldn't do that.
like future upgrade, system
That's
upgrades
why I don't
or,
like this line item.
Okay.
It's very confusing
yeah.
for everybody.
that would make more sense if we were keeping,
You already have, we'll have those line
Tracks
items
or
over their tracking.
because the idea of having an RFP is like, this is something that is not going to be purchased or expended in this
You're
budget
planning
cycle.
a couple
Yeah.
years down the road.
Right. So we want to save the money for a specific purpose,
For the-
not in this budget.
Right. For
Okay.
the self-supporting or for the transfer fund, the reserve fund, it's already gonna be there. You're transferred it from another spot.
Right.
And that's where you're saying, yeah, that's 100% reserved for
Right,
future
right,
expenditure.
Would we have to transfer out of RFE into that reserve fund?
No, it'll already be there. That's that's why I'm going, that's why it gets
That's
so
like-
confusing
getting
with this line item.
Fuzzy.
When we transfer it down there, we're gonna have, say we're buying, a sweeper. And we got 400,000 sitting there. We're gonna transfer 100,000 from the street fund.
Mhm.
It's gonna go into that line item. At the end of the year, it's gonna be $500,000. So the next year, it's already there. We don't have to
Right.
say it's a reserve, it's a line item all by itself,
Right.
over there in the reserve. The RFE is over in, usually just the general fund that we're setting aside. Okay. The distinction usually is we're doing governmental versus proprietary. We keep everything separate. That's what I want.
Right.
That's what this is set up for. We get confusing, we
Right.
get deeper into it.
Because the funds supported by transfers are a mixture of governmental and proprietary.
And that's why we
the
need to break
auditors-
that up.
Okay.
And that's why the auditors are on me
Yeah.
to break that up.
Because it almost feels like what we need on here, and I get this is probably not like kosher accounting, is like another column for like percent reserved for transfer. Because I feel like that's kind of what we're talking about, right? Is like how much
That's
what is our target to transfer to land building and equipment from water every year?
If you
What is
want
our-
to do that,
Because I just like that's more like, at least that was my understanding when we put this on the strategic plan. It's just like, do we want to spend $200,000 from the water fund every year on land building equipment? Do we want to spend 100? Like, just sort of what is our how much are we trying to put into savings every year?
Yeah, I mean, that's part of it. The other is the COG we've talked about.
Yeah, I know these are great. Yeah, I'm not disparaging any of that. It's just
The GOC is that other portion of it that we do $1,000 of contingency in the water fund, but then next year we roll over and we got another $100,000 there, but we haven't grown that any, right? So if we do have an emergency, we hope we have
Right,
$100,000. So we're out, as opposed to if we're building that up over time. And if you look at, fund balances, and we're not talking about having millions of dollars sitting in an account and just collecting interest, and
Right.
meanwhile we're raising water and sewer rates, right?
down.
But to have the sorts of, not an endowment, but to have some sort of a
Yeah.
savings account for
Yeah.
our
Right,
operating
right,
budget, not capital improvement budget, but our operating budget. We have no savings for our operating budget outside of our little bit of contingency that we're able to afford every year. But
Right.
it doesn't grow year after year after year. It's just this little $100,000, and
it just sits there, right? That's it.
it just repeats every year. We reallocate it, we rebudget $100,000 every year, but But in adding these numbers, again, we're gonna be, that ending fund balance for that fund, the water fund, for example, will grow over time.
Right.
The more every year that we don't use it, it will grow and we'll add to it, and we'll add to it, and we'll add to it. Until we get to a certain level, then we probably don't need to add to it anymore, right? We're gonna hit our level
We'll
where
hit
it's
our
like, hey,
level.
we're there after 10 years, I think is what.
Yeah, 10 years the limit.
So after 10 years, we'll break that and divide it by 10, and over 10 years, we'll hit our limit, and by then it will have gotten more expensive, so we'll go another, another couple of years. But at some point, it's like, okay,
We
we've
gotta
got a
pay
nice
it.
reserve
Yeah.
in our operating fund, we're good. And meanwhile, we're still having to put money aside for future projects, but we're just trying to get an operating, operating reserve.
Yeah.
Is really what we're lacking. In addition to, in some years, not being able to put money over into future projects expenses and then let go of equipment, right? So-
Right, okay, no, that makes sense.
So,
Yeah.
I'm still, but there isn't, it'd really just be switching to a different way of accounting for the money if we do
Right.
on the self-supporting funds in particular, right?
Supporting funds, I think we really.
Or the transferred.
We need to pull that one just completely away from the self-supporting funds. It's too confusing for
We just
them.
look at the general fund
Leave
primarily.
it
Yeah.
general fund, because, what I did in Newport, I put money aside in the general fund for a new software. It's
Yeah.
still over there. It's growing and it's like to $100,000 to get software. But it's a line item. I've just been following it for the last 3 or 4 years just to see if they still do it. And that's what, Chris talked to me the other day, should we think about new software? And going, well, do we want to do that? You could start this year, and that's where it would be in my budget, or would be in my budget, it'd be the general fund.
I mean, I like that idea. I think it's more transparent also for the citizenry, like these are the things that we believe to be of future importance and we're currently, every dollar that comes in, it's going to these pots of money. And I think that's also typically kind of the most approachable way to a layperson is like, we put the money in little bins that, or, yeah.
Yeah, the bank account,
yeah,
Yeah.
their own, unique
they're so.
items,
They're
yeah.
sitting there growing,
Yeah.
right, waiting for the process to happen.
Which I think would be helpful for the general public
Yeah.
and for us to understand. I agree with Spencer.
Also, I mean, unless inflation just jams on the brakes anytime soon, like kind of this idea of always kind of putting the money away until it's time to pull the trigger instead of like trying to figure out.
Gives you a little bit of hedge against inflation.
Yeah, you kind
Yes, it
of,
does.
or at least kind of keeps moving forward against it. Yeah,
Yeah,
staying near it instead of like, well, yeah.
So what do you need from us as the finance committee
we need
tonight?
to change, we've got a couple changes, and we're gonna take this to council if the committee is okay with this. I mean, like I said, we're gonna take the RFE away from the self-supporting funds and they'll transfer the funds supported by transfer. And I would say, let's just do the RFE for general fund for 8 to 28%. I mean, we've been the last couple of years since I've been here, we've hit the 10% ending fund balance and 4% general operating for the general fund. And for the rest of the funds, we've hit those percentages.
Okay,
So we're
just
meeting
putting
that.
it in writing.
Right, this puts it in writing, so I have to follow this.
What's policy?
I report back. So basically, I think the only question you really had was the RFE. That we
So I have a question probably from out in the weeds, but, so if the RFE for the general fund is made up of several line items, are they, and we have 12% at the end of a budget year, are they just equitably distributed or do we?
They'll be carried forward as a line item.
Okay,
You will see that. I mean, what we did in Newport is we broke them out. We had one item, but we had everything like a little ledger underneath it that totaled back to that. So you would see, we had this project going, we had this project going in the general fund. It was usually IT projects. We didn't want to put them over in the reserve fund. They wanted to keep them there, so we kept the RFE right there. So there will be a line item, you will see specifics. We're
Okay,
getting more and more detailed. So we're a little bit more transparent, I guess.
as
you
long,
wanna
yeah,
call
as
it.
long as you keep up, then.
Yeah, it's on me, y'all.
Yeah.
And it's nothing I'm not used to doing. I'm used to doing it.
Yeah, it's just
Yeah.
the volume more than the,
No, we don't have the volume, but we might have it one day, but
Yeah.
this helps us get prepared for that.
well, and I think it makes sense to, yeah, it's really,
I mean, that's the
Parts
biggest
down
thing. I
what we're
mean, it's just the reason we put it on the strategic plan, because it's something I was used to handling. And
Right.
it's, the RFE is the hard part. It is a weird one.
And yeah, I still feel like I don't fully get it, so if it's something I'm missing.
I'm in the same boat.
Okay, well, that's good, I guess.
I hate to say that, but yeah, it's the weird thing. And it's just another contingency or
Right.
any fund balance.
Then this is maybe a little off topic, but I'm just thinking about, like, for example, the police cars, where in the,
They're getting expensive.
right, but in the land building and equipment or whatever they're in, capital improvement.
They're in the LBE right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, we're allegedly supposed to get a new one every year. So then that wouldn't even be an RFE anymore, right? Because that's just,
We would have a line
expenditure.
item. Yeah.
but it's not reserved for future expenditures because we're just, every budget cycle we're doing
Right.
that.
This is just, we're
Okay.
putting it, they're,
This is only for, yeah, okay,
it's already over there. We're moving money over there.
right, okay.
That's the transfer. That's where the hard part.
Right,
comes in.
whereas if we got a
But
new
we
car
do-
like every other year, the RFP expenditure probably.
Yeah, no, because it's a transfer, oops, sorry, from the general fund. That's where the confusion is coming in. Don't
Where
put
you'd
it,
see that is if you did your schedule, I won't go too far down. So if you had a schedule for like, we're gonna buy 10 vehicles over the next 10 years,
Yeah.
but we're not gonna spend $100,000 on this vehicle this year. We're gonna spend 100,000 this year, plus we're gonna put another $80,000 towards each of these future vehicles, right? So then you're gonna tag
so that
extra money for each of
RFP.
those future vehicles. So then the next year, you're spending your $100,000 plus the 10,000 you got from the last year, but you're also gonna put another $10,000 towards all those future vehicles as well. And so you build, and you're gonna do 10,000 for the vehicle that now you're buying 11 years from now, right? 10 years from then. So if you build the schedule that way, to where you're not actually paying $100,000 for a vehicle this year, you're paying $10,000 because you already had 90 saved from the previous 9 years, just to say $10,000 a year per $100,000 vehicle. Your schedule could operate that way, or as we're doing, you could just say, we're just gonna buy one vehicle for $100,000 every year, because that's what it's gonna take for us to keep up and cycle through our vehicles, because we gotta replace them every 6 to 8 years. So it's really the same thing. The reason we're not doing it the first way is because we don't have that kind of capital up front. Like, we don't have
Right.
more than 100, we're barely scratching to get
right,
$100,000 a year for a vehicle. But if we had $200,000 a year for a vehicle, then why would not put it there and for future vehicles?
Yeah.
Right?
Cause the worst thing you're gonna do is fill up the bucket and then just be like, yay, we got.
Something more if we were buying multiple vehicles, if we were in a spot where we were
Right.
buying 4 or 5 vehicles a year in a big agency, that's when you'd see that, right? That essentially the RFE for vehicles would be pretty large because you're putting it towards all
A bunch of
vehicles
vehicles.
over the future.
Or if you had like a fund for outfitting the vehicle.
And you want to have that fun there because you might only get,
Where they weren't necessarily.
that's how we keep all that in the same spot.
Yeah,
because you might only get 3 vehicles that year, right? Maybe one gets delayed or 2 aren't available. You still want to be putting that money towards those vehicles. You're just not going
Right.
to spend it this year, but you want it to roll over so it's still there for you next year, right? So we're just in a spot, our vehicles are unique just because on the policing, and just because looking back at our trend, we do need to buy like a new vehicle every year to just keep up and keep them rotated out.
and we're just sort of, so ultimately, it's kind of, we're at the cusp of where this thing is useful. And so we're sort of running into a situation where it doesn't seem very practical
Right, for the RFE.
for the RFEs in
Right.
particular, because we just don't have the revenue to be like, well, what do we want to do with this money in the future?
For the volume of purchases.
Yeah, we're just sort of hovering there, and maybe
Makes sense.
5 to 10 years, it would make more sense.
Yeah, to the nuts and bolts and starts crunching numbers, that may fall completely out. I mean, I might just make the 8% for the general.
Yeah,
I mean, I don't really believe that we'll make it for the self-supporting for the fund, so it's either just scratch it.
yeah.
So, I mean, if you're good with the contentious, the numbers, I mean, the biggest thing is people feel the policy. If y'all are comfortable with it, we'll take it to the rest of council. Adoption, we'll make
So do
it,
we need a motion or?
Yeah, you could do a motion with the amendments that we talked about.
So removing the RFE on 2.2 lines 7 and 8.
So moved. Oh, sorry.
Oh, yeah. Is that the only amendment that
That's-
we just came up with?
yeah, that's pretty much.
All right, my head's pretty swimming and then present that to the council at a future meeting. Of your choice. Yeah,
You're the chair, so you get to present it.
Congratulations.
Yeah, I will present it by saying, and now, more from Mike. All in favor? All right, well, we did that.
We've had so many long meetings lately that I'm just like, now I don't know how to deal with being at City Hall without pizza.
I know.
Oh, I've had a lot of sugar
Yeah, we
today.
should go get.
All right, on to urban renewal district.
All right, so we're gonna do a little bit of a history lesson because all of you have come on at different times and I haven't had to do a history lesson in a while, so. All right, and there's a way to remove this. Who showed me how to remove it the other time?
Didn't it just
Should
shrink?
over more?
I thought if
Where's the
you
more?
That
Over
was
here.
hide video panel, oh, hide, oh yeah, look at that, hide floating meeting controls too, right? Oh,
There you
good
go.
enough.
Okay, urban renewal district update. (1990) first adopted, before I was here. The focus was, as you can see, and kind of see, it was really Main Street, a little south of Main Street. You're talking between 12th, maybe that's 11th, out and 20th Street on the north end. So kind of 19th, definitely included Main Street, College Street is kind of there in the middle. So that area. These were the projects that were first identified, and again, you've got these slides in there. But these were the projects that were first identified when the city first said, should we have an urban renewal district to make these improvements? So your urban renewal plan, you have an urban renewal district, which is your boundary, or your urban renewal area, and then you have an urban renewal plan. Your urban renewal plan has to specify what projects you're gonna do within the district to improve property values and increase property values so that you can get that increased tax revenue coming in to pay off the debt that you went into to do these projects, right? So you identify the projects, you get the plan approved, you borrow money, you build all the projects, and then you go into debt repayment mode and you collect money as property taxes increase because the value of the property went up so much because you made all these great improvements. Property value goes up and that increased property value gets taxed and that additional tax goes to pay off the debt to build all these projects. That's tax increment financing in a nutshell. So that's what was sold to the community in 1990. All the other taxing districts have to go along with it. So Fire signed off on this, although I think at the time Fire was still part of the city. But Library District, definitely the county would have signed off on it. The school district would have signed off on it. There's actually some new legislation, newer than 1990, that actually keeps school districts whole with urban renewal districts. There's actually additional funding that goes to backfill where urban renewal dollars comes to cities instead of the schools, they don't lose that money. So most school districts will be okay with urban renewal districts now because there is that kind of backfill of funding that comes in from the state. But anyway, now that I've had a chance to talk about anything else, we did all those projects at the time. The plan was to, well, let me go back up. At the time, the plan was to have the couplet go on College Street, which is why College Street's got the bulb outs and the nice sidewalks. And when you look at that end of College Street, it looks like it could almost be a state highway. Well, the base under there is a state highway base. And the road looks great. It's got the nice bulb outs and the sidewalks everywhere. It looks very uniform. That was urban renewal dollars because that was going to be future Main Street. That's where the westbound lane of the highway was going to go. And then plans changed, and I'll get to plans changed here in a second. But after that project had happened, we needed to, they expanded the size of the urban renewal area to include the strip down 13th Street. We had a bunch of flooding that would happen every year in the downtown area. We didn't want flooding in the downtown area because that decreases property values. So the argument was, hey, if we can decrease flooding in the downtown area by putting this huge storm system in place, then property values will go up and people will actually want to have a business downtown because it's not flooding. So they amended the map. They added this area in. They amended the plan to include this project. They borrowed the money, they spent the money, they paid off the debt for that project. In 2010, the couplet, well, prior to 2010, 2007, 2008-ish, and maybe a little bit before that, Philomath and ODOT made the change and put the couplet on Main and Applegate instead of Main and College. And so in order to do that, the community got together and said, you know, we could update our urban renewal plan and our map, and we could include this couplet area so that we could do some streetscape improvements along this new couplet. Because ODOT's going to put the highway in and the pavement, but they're not going to spend extra money to make it look nice. So let's update the urban renewal plan and update the urban renewal map to include this area on the west end of town between Applegate and Main Street. And we'll do all these improvements, everything from 13th, 12th, 11th, 10th, all the way down to 7th Street between Applegate and Main. We'll do all the improvements there so it'll look really nice and get all those improvements done. We'll borrow the money, we'll do this big project, we'll work with ODOT, and then we'll pay off the debt over the next 10, 15, 20 years to get it all done. There are state laws on how much you can expand your urban renewal area from its original adopted area. They just about ran us completely out of space in 2010. They took as much as they could. In fact, intentionally, I think, they didn't even go to the north end of Main Street because going to the north end of Main Street would have been over, right? They would have been over there. I think it's 10% increase is the maximum they can do. So when they added 13th, that strip, and then they added out between Main and Applegate Street, they actually had to go to the south side of Main Street because if they went north of Main Street, it would have been over that 10%. So south of Main, and the focus was on all those streets between, and you can see the list of other projects they were looking to do there. So this was, the 2010 change was essentially the streetscapes inclusion into urban renewal. That was the vision. In 2015, this one has my fingerprints all over it. We looked at the plan for streetscapes and we said, you know, if ODOT's going to come in and redo the highway, it'd be really nice to replace all the water and sewer lines under there that are 70, 80 years old now. Well, back in the day, they were 60, 70 years old. But there was no accounting in the urban renewal plan. There was no project listed in the urban renewal plan to replace water and sewer lines under Applegate and Main Street, right? Why would there be for Applegate? It wasn't even part of the highway. It wasn't even urban renewal originally. But they expanded out in 2010, but they didn't add in water and sewer lines along Main and Applegate Street. Well, if you don't have water and you don't have sewer and you don't have good pipes in your downtown area, who's going to go to your downtown area, right? And so we made the argument in 2015 to the community that we needed to expand the urban renewal area again to cover the area along Main Street that was directly over the water pipes and the sewer pipes. And I mean directly over, like 2 foot to 3 foot wide, directly over the pipes. And in having the engineer run the numbers, if we did 3 foot above the water pipe and the sewer pipe, we were just barely still underneath that 10%, like literally at the 10% over. So we did the math, we qualified, we got it approved from the state, and we expanded the urban renewal area, and we added this project into the urban renewal plan. This was a big project, it's $4.2 million. That could have come out of the water and the sewer fund, but urban renewal funds are much better because it's less utility ratepayers. It's, you know, it's big tax dollars, not city tax dollars. So we got a lot of benefit out of the downtown area by getting those water and sewer projects completed. So that was the 2015 change. And then we were done growing. We can't grow it anymore, and we're reaching our total indebtedness. We still hadn't done the streetscape project yet, so we had all this money coming in, but we weren't building the project, we weren't paying off a project yet. And then the community came up about this property in 2016. It was an eyesore, it was a travesty, it was a lot of things. It was a science project in the making. And the city council, I went to the city council, said, what do you think about acquiring this property with urban renewal and really make this kind of a smaller scale urban renewal project in and of itself, just this property? The city council agreed. It was already inside the urban renewal area, so we didn't need to expand the area, but we amended the urban renewal plan by adding this line item for the purchase of this blighted property inside the downtown area. The area didn't have to grow, but within the area we had to add to the plan, in addition to streetscapes and the water and sewer projects, we also want to build, or we want to buy this property, do something with this 14th and Main property. We want control of it, we want to clean it up. And really what had happened is this thing sat empty for years and years and years. Nobody wanted to touch it. Everybody knew it had underground tanks. It was a contaminated site. No developer in their right mind would buy this property and clean it up. Why would you? I mean, your investment is unknown. And so it's often that properties like this have to be cleaned up by an entity like a government entity that has to come in and do the cleanup. We got some grant money to do the phase 1, phase 2 environmental assessment. We didn't get grant money for the cleanup, which is underway now. We're getting under contract and we'll hopefully have that in the next few months. But this project got added in 2016, which is weird that that's 9 years ago.
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
What is the process? Because I guess to establish one and then to change the area and the plan, is it just the city council votes on it, or?
You've got to have a public hearing.
Okay.
You've got to allow the other taxing districts to be able to have a say.
And does it say just mean?
They can oppose.
Okay.
Yeah, they can oppose. There's a form, I believe there's actually a formal opposition letter that they can submit.
Okay.
It's state law, and I'm not overly
Yeah.
confused, so we haven't done since 2016, but
Sure. Okay.
you know, there's a very specific process. You typically end up hiring an urban renewal consultant to help because it's very specific on state law.
But at the end of the day, it's the city council that.
The city
votes on
council
it.
votes on
Okay.
it, yeah, it doesn't go out to the, and they could defer it to the public if you wanted, but
Right.
generally the council makes
Right,
sense.
right, okay.
And it's an ordinance.
And if one of the taxing jurisdictions writes one of those opposition letters, is that like veto it, or it just?
It's a percentage of them, like
Okay.
a certain percentage of them have to veto and percentage of the total tax revenue, and
Okay,
there's some parameters there.
thank you.
Yep. Okay, so we're still on 1340 Main Street, which is this property here. And that's as far as I want to go here. So we haven't done any changes to urban renewal since 2016, other than we built the streetscape project, right? So urban renewal dollars was a major component of the streetscape project. And if I can kind of remember the numbers off the top of my head, there was about $1 million that came from our street fund that went into it. There's $530,000 that came from Campo for 13th Street. There was obviously money from MoDOT. I think the city's project all in, or urban renewal all in, was I think about $5 million. that came into that project. Does that sound about right? Rough numbers?
right.
Thanks, Mike. Still got it.
$5 million check.
Yeah.
Wow.
So $5 million towards the streetscape project, and then we've set. So what Mike has balanced out now is that we've got a total maximum of debt. The most money we could ever borrow towards urban renewal for all these projects, we had to put a cap on. We did that back in the 2010 version. The state came out and said you either have to put a date certain when it will end, or you have to put a total amount of debt, the maximum amount of debt you can go into in total. And it's not like you go into debt, you pay it off, you can go into more debt, you pay it off. It's a total amount of tax dollars that can go towards urban renewal projects, right? So it's a maximum indebtedness is what they call it. So we were close to that number. In fact, we're close to the number. I think we're $360,000 away from our maximum indebtedness number. So if you look at the budget for this year, there's a spending line item in there for renewal project for up to $360,000 because that's it. Then we're tapped out, and now we're in repayment mode, 100% repayment mode. Okay, and the nice part, one of the benefits of having not built the streetscapes project 10 years ago is building now is we saved up a lot of money.
Yeah.
We had the $5 million sitting there to pay, right? We didn't have to borrow a bunch of money to make that happen. And so we will have some debt. The water and the sewer lines that we installed, we did borrow money to do that. We didn't have cash in the bank to do it. So we borrowed money to do those projects. So we use urban renewal dollars every year. We transfer over and make a payment towards the water and sewer projects. And those will take another, I haven't seen the exact math, 3 to 5 years or so.
33 or something when we're done.
33? Yeah. So
Yeah,
we've got
years.
a few more years to pay that off. And then at the end of all that, then we'll actually sunset the entire, they call it sunsetting, the urban renewal district will go away. So we have a little bit of money, I say, to play with. We have a list of projects that have been approved in the urban renewal plan from 2010 to 2016, right? I mean, all of those projects are still in there. No projects got taken out of there, right? We added some projects in, but there's some of these old hanging projects still there. When this project got approved, it was, again, to remove blighted property from the downtown, provide off-street parking, provide social meeting spaces in the downtown area. That was kind of the impetus that we got built into the plan. And so now we're looking at this property, and I think this is the specific language that comes actually right out of the urban renewal plan, and there's a lot there. Remove the blight, brownfield cleanup, we know there's underground storage tanks, hydraulic lift, et cetera. Downtown off-street parking creation, and then a public restroom of some sort was envisioned there as well. So that's what's in the plan, but there's other things in the plan, like new buildings or, remove blight just in general, right? So we're definitely not tied to like, we have to do 1, 2, 3, and 4. These are things that are in the plan that if we have the money, we can do, right? We could turn that area into a parking lot. Maybe not the best use for it, but we can do it with urban renewal dollars because it's in the urban renewal plan, right? We could put a public restroom on there because it's in the urban renewal plan that we could do it. Don't have to. It's not maybe not the best use for that lot is just to put a bathroom on it, but we could because it's in the plan. So where we're at now is what is the highest, best use for this property? And is it within the scope of the urban renewal plan so that we can use our remaining urban renewal dollars towards it, right? I sent out post this one, I sent out another couple of sheets for you that came directly out of this Philomath Downtown Revitalization Plan. This was completed, and I think I gave you the wrong date on the email. I think I was a year older. This was done in March of 2022. March 2022. So in March 2022, there was some funding available through the state to look at revitalization. The money was really set toward like brownfield properties or brownfield areas. And we finagled it a little bit, that we really wanted to look at this property, 14th Street, but there wasn't funding available that could look at a specific property. So we said, well, let's not look at just that property. Let's look at all of Philomath downtown, and let's come up with a revitalization plan for all of downtown. This document is one that I'm going to be going into a lot more depth with the Housing and Economic Development Committee. We're going to hit on this pretty hard, I think this month, or early next month. We're going to go through this pretty hard. It has a lot of recommendations on things to do, everything from code revisions to kind of visioning things, parking requirements. I mean, there's just a ton of stuff in here. But one of the things that it did at the end is it looked at these site-specific areas and made recommendations for improvements. And so what I sent you, if I remember right, Arcs, 13th Street Festival, River, Gateway. Guess I could look at my email and probably find it faster. Grants for property identification. 47, sorry about that. So on brownfield inventory, brownfield by the state is defined pretty broadly. Basically, brownfield, state's definition is any property that's not developed its full potential due to some type of concern or whatever that might be. It could be that it's got the underground storage tanks. It might be that it's got wetlands on it. It might be a steep slope. It might be any type of pollution type area. It could be that it's even adjacent to a use that's, maybe it's got noise or vibration or some other thing. So for whatever reason, the property hasn't developed to its full extent. That constitutes as a brownfield for the most part by the state's definition. And so I know when I was growing up, Brownsfield, I always thought of like this huge like waste dump, like the old dump that got
Right.
covered over, and it's like, oh, that's the brownfield, but it's really not. It could be like our site, just a used gas station. It's got some underground storage tanks, but it's more than what a typical developer is going to want to come and want to take care of because of the uncertainty that's there, right? So for this property, it's identified in our brownfield inventory, and identified several in town. It is on page 52, high priority brownfield site description. This is 1348 Main Street. I won't read this to you, obviously, I sent it to you ahead of time. But their recommendations on this were to enroll the site in a DEQ, the voluntary cleanup program, which we've done. And so the consultant or the contractor we brought on board to do the cleanup will be working hand in hand with DEQ, doing samples and sending the samples to the sample results to DEQ. And so they'll be going through that. So we've done that. Discuss options for assessment and cleanup, funding assistance with Business Oregon and EPA. Did that. Funding is tight and short, so we're using our own funding for it. We're actually using urban renewal funds to do the cleanup. That was part of the original plan. Decommission the underground storage tanks in accordance with DEQ regulations. Again, we're using urban renewal dollars to take care of that. And then conduct further assessment of soil, groundwater, and soil vapor to define degree and extent of impacts and develop risk mitigation measures. Company that we're doing will be doing all of that. So when they're done with the property, we're going to have a nice gravel pad on how level it will be, but it will be fairly level gravel pad with all the environmental stuff taken care of and cleaned up, which will make it not a brownfield anymore. Now we've got a very developable site, and I would argue a very valuable site, right there at 14th and Main. It's kind of the gateway into the downtown area. It looks bad now. It looked bad and even worse before, but that's going to become a very, very valuable property that the city's going to own very quickly, right, within the next couple of months. And so it leads to the discussion of what do we want to do with the property. And so I want to just kind of give a history of urban renewal with you guys, and then we don't need to spend a lot of time tonight, but just start thinking through the process of what do we want to have happen with that property. There's another page later in here, and I won't try to find it because I didn't do a very good job finding this first page. There's a page later in here that does have a recommendation for mixed use, kind of retail, office space on that first floor, and then 2 to 3 levels of residential housing above that. Could be affordable housing, could be market rate housing, could be a combo of the, could be a combination of that. Another use that could be there would be some type like a smaller hotel, kind of a boutique hotel of some sort that would need that kind of half block size. Nothing huge, but something that would have, 15, 20 rooms or something like that that would fit on that site. It'd be another option. When we were doing the streetscapes, there's some conversations about having that be like a downtown plaza with more street furnishings and landscaped and things. It could just be a park in that downtown corridor for events. Maybe the farmer's market moves over there and that becomes a space for farmer's market in that area. So there's been different ideas, but nothing's been settled on because we still had to get the property cleaned up, right? So now that we're in cleanup mode, we need to start thinking and analyzing and come up with some actual thoughts on what we want to do with the property. My recommendation would be once we decide what we want to do, depending on what we want to do, we'll probably look for some partners. We're either going to look for some grants. If we're going to do park stuff, we're going to look for some grant stuff. If we're going to do some type of a mixed use building, then we'd want to put either mixed use building or hotel, anything that's going to be, I don't want the city to open up a hotel there, right? Like we're not going to be in the hotel business. Maybe a grocery store. The city could open a grocery store.
Hey.
Start opening our own grocery store.
All the way.
But short of opening our own store or hotel or whatever, we're going to want to partner with private sector, right? And we essentially will put the land up as kind of collateral and say, hey, look, here's what we're bringing to the table. Here's a property. If you'll build this and this and this and this with these and these and these features, i.e. a clock tower, if you build all of these things that we want, then we'll give you the land, right? Or we'll give you the land at this cost, or we'll lease you the land for X amount, whatever, right? But we have some very valuable property to give. What are you going to build for us? And then you run and you do your operation, you run your business the way you're going to run it, right? If you're going to do mixed use commercial, residential above, you own it, you run it, you everything. We'll lease you the property, we'll sell you the property, and then we get whatever we as the city decide we want there. And then we don't have the strings attached to it on having to run it or lease it or any of that kind of stuff. So it gives us some benefit, it gives us some things to play, but we've just, like I said, we've not really had any recent conversations about what the best, highest use of that property would be. So I'll kind of leave it there. I don't know that it's helpful to throw out other ideas, but we can. But the mayor's looking like short meetings are good, so maybe we can do a couple of thoughts, or I can answer any questions. And I guess I would go, I think we're going to have time to be able to do a work session on this with the city council.
Okay.
So I may give even a more brief kind of background on urban renewal, but really focus in on this property specifically and start the conversation there. But it's really looking for, I don't expect we're to come out of work sessions and this is what we're going to do, go do an RFP. But what is the process we want to follow to determine what it is we want to do there, and how do we get to there, right? How do we get to a spot where we've decided this is what we'd like to do, staff go over to an RFP, request for bids, so that we can get some bids in or some proposals in on, if we say give us mixed use, that's, minimum X number of square foot, X number of floors, yada, yada, yada. We can put very specific language in there. We can even put our Timbertown style and theme stuff in there for aesthetics. We can put the clock tower on there. I mean, there's a lot of things we can say. These are all the things that we want. Give us your proposals. And then you open up to the public sector or the private sector and they submit all their proposals. Those come back to the council. You look at what you like best. You go out to the, and then you go into contract negotiations and you go through getting the project built. So that's kind of roadmap. If you're gonna do more plaza, obviously it stays probably city possession or we give it to the chamber to play with or something. I mean, there's a lot of different things we can do, so. The sky's the limit.
Um,
Bear with more.
Thank you. I think I'm really excited about this possibility, and I know Chris and I have kicked around a lot of stuff just in our check-ins, and I think to me, I have always been a huge fan of the idea of having some kind of, you know, plaza community gathering space. I don't feel like 14th and Main is the right place for something like that. I just, even if it's beautiful and has trees and grass and art and everything, it doesn't seem like the perfect place to have a park or to have some sort of like town square like that. And I think in my mind, and this gets into my suggestion, what I think would be the best option. I don't want to have to reinvent the wheel to come up with some kind of town square or some kind of gathering place thing. I want to just look at where are people already mingling and gathering, where are people already kind of engaging in, you know, that sort of community life and invest in a place like that. And then use this opportunity at 14th and Main to really do something new that is a value add, that is something we don't already have any sort of sense of, and can kind of continue the momentum we have with our downtown. So I guess that's all of my preamble to say, and we'll talk about this more in the work session, but I feel like what would make the most sense in my mind would be to use that lot for some type of building. I'm jury's out for me exactly what that should be, what stipulate if we want it to be residential, if we want it to be commercial, if we want it to, you know, have restrooms, if we want it to have, you know, whatever. That's not as important to me. I just think continuing the downtown streetscape, buildingscape, having sort of a feature building there on the corner to kind of welcome you as you enter downtown. I like the idea of a clock tower, but you know, I'm open to negotiations.
So for a bill,
Yeah.
we
And
have a
then-
bell tower in town, so.
Yeah, that's true. But then I think part of where I'm going with this is on that lot, I think a building makes sense, but then I really want us to look at 13th Street closer to see how we can really capitalize on the fact that 13th Street is already basically the town square of where, like, that, if you want to probably go out there right now and there are people, you know, sitting, having a beer or waiting to go to the Dizzy Hen or sitting on the bench talking with their friend. So I guess that's my view on it, is like, we already have a place in town now, which we didn't have a few years ago. So I get that, but there is a place downtown now where people mingle and talk to their friends and congregate and go out at night. I don't think we need to build a new one of those a block away when there is already a place. I think we need to invest in 13th Street, and there have been proposals for that around like putting hanging lights over it, investing in curbs and sidewalks that make it more of the festival street.
Yeah, and the revitalization plan, they call it North 13th Street Festival Street.
Yeah.
And they've got, you know, curbless street sections, trees and landscaping, informational kiosk, thematic and ambient lighting, gateway feature, you know, they got the big card for there, see that, they have the
Yeah.
archway kind of going in for
Yeah.
13th Street stuff, so there's a lot of ideas on things, kind of like the mayor's saying, to really enhance 13th Street area.
Yeah.
Look at that.
I guess that's just that's what feels like it makes the most, like, what is the most appropriate use of each location. Like, it feels like trying to put the 14th and Main lot as a town square feels like kind of trying to put, you know, a round peg in a square hole and then not improving 13th Street feels like putting the square peg in the, it just feels like I want to just capitalize on the unique, like the inherent features that both of those locations have, where 13th is already surrounded by great businesses and eateries and it's where people already congregate. Let's just make it an even nicer place to congregate and a nicer place to go out and have a drink or have dinner. And then 14th Street is already this large vacant lot right in the core of downtown, right as you enter on a corner. Let's turn that into something that's perfect for that. So, I'll get off of my little soapbox now, but just to say that that's what makes the most sense to me. But I'm curious what you guys think.
So a couple years back, sorry,
Yep.
a couple years back, Councillor Causey and I worked at the farmer's market on the Sunday. And we talked about gathering areas. Remember that? And we let the people vote on what they were looking, what were their gathering areas. We had 5 options. What did they foresee as places and development wise? And it was interesting seeing their perspectives. I don't have the information in front of me, but I realized then that that North 13th was a real popular, even just a couple of years ago. People were like, this is an upcoming.
Right.
We kind of like this idea. We like when the street parties we've had. We like closing off the road. We like how it's open. But a lot of people did mention, from my memory, that about parking sometimes is challenging. That sometime we need to figure out where everyone's going to park. If we're going to bring more people into downtown and we want people to congregate there, where are they going to park?
Yeah, and we've added parking on 13th Street,
Right.
just south of Main Street, between
Yeah.
13th and Main.
Right.
And then this summer, we'll be going down to 12th Street and 11th Street, and we'll be adding on-street parking on both sides of the street for 12th and 11th. So we are looking at that holistically. Like, we know that we are going to need more parking in the downtown area. We need to start using the side streets too, because Main Street's limited, Apple Creek's limited. So on the side streets between, we are trying to make as much parking there as we can. And then, of course, north of College, and there's quite a bit of parking in there, but it's neighborhood, so you kind of feel like, I don't want to park at somebody's house, so having the downtown parking area is good. I had a vision at one point for even 14th and Main to, let's put like a 3-story parking garage in there, maybe do commercial in the down, kind of like Liberty Plaza in Salem.
Right.
Commercial on the first floor, then
Yeah.
parking up above.
Right.
Way too cost prohibitive.
Right.
It's super, super expensive. You couldn't even afford to do it today. I think back in the day, was maybe more affordable, but I don't know. But just way too expensive, way too quick. But I mean, that was the thought, right? It's like, hey, if you had a centralized area where everybody could just go and park, and you go down the stairs, and then you're on foot. Now you're walking all over downtown, right? But way too cost prohibitive, and so even the idea of like a mixed use on 14th and Main, you're still going to have some parking there, right? And if you go residential, then that's going to be private for the residences, the residential use. If you go commercial, then maybe more of that's available on the evenings and weekends, right? If it's an all commercial building, who's going to be there on the weekends and evenings when you're having your festivals and your events on 13th, right? So there may be some joined use there. But yeah, I mean, parking will always be an issue. However, every time I think park's an issue, I think of going like the Rose Parade. It's like, I've never gone to the Rose Parade and parked and got out of my car and seen the parade. I mean, you're parking blocks and blocks away. If you're gonna have a great popular event, you're gonna walk to it.
Even football games at Oregon State or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I guess that's what because I heard the same thing, and I think part of it is just a little bit of like a growing up moment for Philomath of like, yes, if it's the dirt road block party, you're gonna have to maybe park a couple blocks away.
Yeah.
But any other time, like I went to Dizzy Hen on Saturday night, right? Which is like, there was a line out the door around the block, dirt road. Like, I've never had to park more than like a block away. And I think just mentally people in Philomath are used to being able to park directly.
Birdies.
But still, I'm guessing you didn't park blocks away. So I do think just there's a little, and I'm not making fun of it because oh my God, why is it parking? And I was right here. But just, I do think that there's a little bit of a mental shift.
Yes.
I think people in Philomath need to do of like, yes, you may have to park on the other side of the street and cross the street to get to the place you're going. It's like,
we're on
Side
the,
street.
just,
the next block down on the same
right. I
street.
think we all were very used to being able to park in any spot at any time because no one else was down.
Thing, so.
And now, thank God, we have a downtown that people want to be in, a place where people
Yeah.
go out with friends. And I anytime that I can't easily get a spot, I'm happy about it because that means that we did something right.
Yeah.
But just to that point, I think, yes, I think we should think about parking. I'm glad we're talking about the 12th and 11th Street pieces, but I also don't think that we're in a situation where it's like, I don't think we're losing out on any business or visitors or something because they genuinely can't find a place to park. Like,
Right, it's
you know,
not-
we've all been to like,
Not bottleneck.
yeah, it's not like
use of
you know, the
downtown.
Newport like Bayfront or something where you just like, you know, you drive and you're like, I'm leaving, I'm not doing this kind of thing. You know, like I don't think we're in a situation like that.
Yeah.
And you know, maybe 20 years from now we will be, but I just, I guess I say all this just to say I think we should think about it, but I certainly don't want that to be an impediment to, you know, continuing to develop.
Right,
the
right.
future.
And just in honoring those that have the concern.
Yeah,
Whenever we
yeah.
address things, I think even if addressing them gives credence to their points of
Totally,
view.
yeah.
We're addressing
I
that,
think
we're
that's reasonable.
considering that.
Yeah.
I
Well,
think it's-
I have
Oh,
a
please.
20 years
Oh,
from
please.
now question, and that it's a little bit of a fork in the road for my thinking of what to do with that space. What we currently, the city is in control of a nice lot that's right kind of in the heart of what we're trying to do with the city. You and I have talked about this a little bit, but like, are there other properties in the foreseeable future that might be acceptable? You know, like, I guess part, like, one of my first triage things was like, well, do we want to retain control of it and turn it into something that is like a city-owned functional hub, for lack of a better word, whether that be like a pedestrian hub, like a square, or whether that's, you know, future home of a community center type situation, like, but if it doesn't feel like we're doing, like, then I guess I'd be more hesitant to do a private option, right? Like, so, you know, like a development as a hotel or a whatever, if in the next 50 years we're not, you know, like we won't be able to centrally locate a city item. And I know that's kind of hard to quantitate because,
Well, and I think we've talked about a community center, we talked about senior centers, we talked about a lot of, PCS has talked about needing new, locations, and we talked a lot about looking forward, what are our needs?
Yeah.
Do we need something like that? And I think there's been a lot of different proposals and a lot of ideas that have showed up, at least in the time that I've been here in regards to that. What our needs, they've talked about a commercial kitchen. We should have, should the city do have something that could be used for education purposes and for senior citizen gatherings and public usage.
I think my take on that is just that lot, like for a lot of those things, I don't actually know if you want to be in the heart of downtown. You know, like I
Right.
think there's huge advantages to being in the heart of downtown for something like a restaurant or a hotel or a store or something, but there's huge disadvantages to being in the heart of downtown for something like a senior center. Or so I just think I don't know if there's something that we would want to put there that's not. I don't know. Maybe I'm.
yeah, I'm not sure either. I guess I'm just thinking like, Independence would be a good example.
Sure.
That there's these little pockets of things that are either city or I guess university owned, like at Webster.
Yeah, like what stuff?
There's all that stuff on the right hand. So like if you go and there's like an ice cream shop and the good pizza place and like kind of a handful of stuff down the left side, and there's like park space that I think is on the edge of the university. There's kind of a town square thing. I guess I'm just thinking of these areas where there's this sort of vibe that makes where you're not like crushed by economy. And I know that that's not like we're not in a
Right. Luckily,
imminent danger.
We got a ways to go.
I do want to be mindful of kind of being in control, literally, of.
Yeah, I've always thought, especially for the smaller downtown, I mean, the ones that are most attractive are the ones that are a little more uniform, right? All the buildings are out of the street. They're all 2 or 3 stories tall. And you do get that vibe where you can go from like building to building to
Right.
building without having to like, I gotta go across like a parking lot to get to the next street. And then I got
Yeah.
this other big gap, right? Like from a downtown economic development strategy, you want your buildings close together and you want everything up front because you want that pedestrian connectivity as opposed to having everything spread out with parking lots in between or parks in between. You wouldn't want that for 8 blocks, right? But you
Right.
definitely in your core and let's face it, even if Philomath triples in size or quadruples in size, we're still not gonna have that type of a downtown from one end of town to the other, right? We're still gonna be limited to
Yeah, I guess
probably
we're
a 4 or
talking
5, maybe a 6 block,
Yeah.
length at most at full build out kind of thing, and full
Three
build out
wide or
is,
something, yeah.
you know,
That's fast.
And another question, how, in that, this is just me thinking down the road, how likely it is that someone would go with in keeping with our theme? So we don't get a building that looks totally out of place, like doesn't belong with us. Is it likely that we can find someone who'll be willing to keep with, because I think the theme is important, what we have
Oh,
going
100%,
on.
yeah.
I don't want someone, that would look like, oh, how odd, why'd they do that? It kind of messes up the whole.
the architects that we're talking to that are putting in the new buildings here and future buildings love our theme. They
Okay,
love building with natural materials. They love the timbers. They love that type of design. So we're hearing accolades about
Okay.
our design standards. We have in our development code, we've got provision that says you have to use at least 3 primary building materials, which means you can't be all brick, you can't be all stucco, you can't be all glass. You got to use a combination. If you've seen the Benton County Schools Credit Union building that opened up is a great example.
Right.
And we championed that one. Pat Deppa and I looked at many, many examples of types of buildings that we were looking at as we were showing the planning commission. These are the types of buildings that we're talking about. When we say timber town, this is what it means, these types of buildings. And they don't all look the same. They're all different. But they have that same kind of look because you got multiple building materials. You got some stone, you got some timber, you got some metal. You can add that with wood or stucco, whatever you're going to add to it. But you get the multiple look. And then, so any building that comes in, commercial, industrial building comes in, it's gonna have to have the minimum 3 building materials. That helps. And then the city's doing our facade grant program, and for this facade grant program, to qualify for that grant, which is a $10,000 matching grant, you have to incorporate the timber town specific things. So when you're doing your architectural renderings of what the building's gonna look like, we're very specifically looking for the different colors, the different materials. We're looking for the metal awnings, the big exposed timbers. I mean, we're all but requiring that in order to get the funding for those projects. So that will kind of help as well. But we want variety. We don't want to look like Disneyland or Sisters, sorry, but we don't want
Yeah.
to look like, pretend land where everything's just these facades. We want buildings to be unique and different and interesting, but we also want them to kind of hovering on this newer theme that we're going with. But I think it's been well accepted, and I think it will continue to be.
And, I mean, specifically for this lot, that would be part of the condition. with
right, like,
getting
we'd
the
require
land.
it.
Yeah, so we'd be like, hey, we got this great lot you can use if you agree to have a bell tower and make it look timber town.
yeah,
Everything else up to you.
Yeah, and we'll have pictures of, wood doors and wood
Yeah,
timbers and, timber entryways. And, we'll include that in the RFP and say, these are the things that we're looking for. So when you make your proposal and do your design, this is the things we want to see. And if we see it, we'll score you higher. If we don't see it, we're going to score you lower, right? So for this lot specifically, it'll be good. But more generally, the community loves the Timbertown look. They've really latched onto it, and it's sharp. And
they also love the lights. I got 2 text messages tonight. Teresa, did you see? Yeah.
I know, that was great, because they
Yeah.
drove in, as it was getting dark. I was like,
our trees up.
yeah,
Yeah, the trees are up there.
and then I saw the new ones on 13, too.
Yeah.
On the other side.
Be the other way.
Yeah. Did you want to talk at all about potential position?
I think I'll just say this. Um, I think we'll wait. It's
Okay.
pretty specific, putting anybody uncomfortable. So I think we'll wait. There's workings, again, we've got $360,000 roughly. I keep looking at Mike because he's gonna be like, oh, it's 360, but I think it's about right. 360 minus what it's gonna take us to do the cleanup. Still got some money, right? So there's some other land that we're looking to maybe acquire that might be beneficial to the plan. A lot of the lighting and things on 13th Street, it's in the plan. We could do that tomorrow, right? If the city council says it's in the plan, go forward. It's in the budget this year already, and we'll order lights and get it engineered and figure it out and get the lights in and put some more trees. And so we could do 13th Street, probably not this year, but when we get to our council retreat, that could be a priority for this next year and say, take on 13th Street. We want to see these improvements. Here's the types of improvements we want to go, mark, set, go.
Yeah.
And we could do it. We've got the funding to do it. But every dollar we use there is money we can't spend elsewhere, right? So we're at that point now where we're kind of, what are the most important projects still in the plan? And when we get to the work session, I'll have a better list of those projects. Rather than on the slides, I'll include that in the memo so it's a little bit easier to follow on. Here's all the additional projects that are still identified in the urban renewal plan that we could take on. And here's a little bit of what we've got to do it, but I don't want to distract too much from 14th. I really want to have a vast discussion about 14th and really, if we can get out of that work session with a clear path forward on what the council would like to do with that property, and staff can have some marching orders to go and get like an RFP put together.
Yep.
I'd love it, because now project's getting cleaned up, and it's not gonna sit there for another 10 months or 12 months before we decide what we're doing with it, right? So I'd kind of like to keep the momentum going.
Yeah.
A newly cleaned up project or newly cleaned
Yeah.
up property is gonna draw attention, and so we
Yeah.
wanna keep that going.
I also think, I just philosophically, I don't like the idea of us owning properties that just sit there and we don't, like, I think
Oh, yeah,
we bought them with
I wouldn't
tax money.
want
I
it.
feel like to be a benefit to taxpayers, not just, everyone come look at this gravel lot that we bought with your
Yeah,
money. you know?
I agree, and it was
Yeah.
mostly, I also agree that it's a good spot for a
Yeah,
building.
sure.
I'm not, but I'm just,
No,
wondering, like,
yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's good for us to talk about in a work session.
I think
Yeah.
for sure, when Streetscape was the project to do, we just didn't spend urban renewal dollars, because we wanted everything there to be able to go towards Streetscape, to make Streetscapes as big as
Yeah.
best it could be.
Yeah.
Now that it's done, we've done the math, it's like, oh, here's what we have left.
Yeah.
What about those projects that we've been
Yeah.
hanging on to? We bought that property,
Right,
we got
right,
this
right.
other, we got this stuff on 13th, right? So now we're kind of doing these little projects, because we know how much money we have left,
Right.
which we didn't know 3 years ago.
Right.
Right?
And I
So
guess-
that's been the delay on why that
Yeah.
project.
and I agree, I definitely don't want to just have an empty lot.
Right.
sitting, Yeah,
I guess that's the other reason. Find some private partner to develop a building, not let us focus on 13th, because like, I feel like, $300,000 isn't enough to really build anything on that lot, but it is enough to like, maybe improve that lot and then have some that could make a 300,000 or whatever we end up with, even $50,000 worth of, lights and stuff for 13th. That'll improve the place a lot. So anyway, I feel like I'm just repeating myself now. So
I'll clarify that I like the idea of 13th, and I do think it's better as a building,
okay,
but what kind of thing
Right.
goes there would be my really only.
Like I said, I'll be going through this with Housing and Economic Development Committee,
Oh, great.
and they may have some additional insights and ideas and things as
Yeah, I
well.
am on that, yeah.
So we'll go through this in more detail. We could have been going through it all year, honestly. It just wasn't a high priority for me, unfortunately, or didn't have the time. But we'll start looking at this more. So they may have more input
Yeah,
as
sure.
well, and some ideas that I can bring forward to you, or Spencer can bring forward to you. But there's a lot of good stuff in here. It's kind of cool.
That's the other one, right, Chair?
I know, look at you.
Yeah.
Double duty now. We're gonna name it the
Economics, it's all economics.
The Irwin bill.
Okay, well, that's all I've got. So I'll prepare, I've got some good feedback.
Oh, got a nice town.
Watch out.
Yeah.
Beneficial for me to bring to the council work session in December about urban renewal or this site specific.
I guess, do you guys feel like do you understand? Because I feel like it took me a very long time. I mean, you've
I
been
do,
around.
actually.
Okay, good.
But Chris and I'm just to be clear, I didn't learn all that in the
Right,
class.
okay, yeah,
Kind of went over it once before as well.
I feel like it took me a long time to wrap.
And
my head around
it's
all
still
that.
like
Yeah, okay.
how all the back end stuff works out. I'm not 100% clear on, but we don't need to be. Yeah, well, yeah, Mike and the people that created this place.
Right.
So,
Yeah, and when we get ready to sunset, we will hire a consultant to come in and make sure that they walk us through sunsetting the urban renewal district. There's always the opportunity to create a new urban renewal district, right? So that may be a big conversation for a future council, or maybe not too future council. Do we want to identify a new urban renewal area with new urban renewal plan projects that will get rid of the blight in the area and help it develop and increase in value, right? So we've still got some work to do on current, right, to get us through the next few years for sure, but it won't be that long that we'll probably be having that discussion. There's also newer urban renewal areas that are focused, rather than economic development, they focus on housing specifically. So you can do some like infrastructure improvements and things to kind of prep properties for housing to come in. Those are kind of newer, but not newer, they're more popular as of recent. And so there's good examples of those that have started up. But again, you gotta get the buy off of all the other district stuff. So anyway, future date, some point, but anyway, okay, good. Well, good stuff. I feel like I've got good information to bring to you for the work session. Mike's got his information for,
Yep.
It's kind of next step exciting, isn't it? I'm sorry, but I'm kind of like excited about the next steps.
Oh, yeah, no, I know.
I think a simple thing for the work session maybe is a consolidated list of what isn't done that's
Oh, yeah.
across the bases.
okay,
Does that make, just like that, so we can kind of go, all right, well,
Like what the options are.
whatever we do,
Yeah.
does it fit under one of
Yeah.
these headings?
so list development, but if it's been completed, I'll put like the date when it
Yeah,
got
that'd be
completed.
Yeah.
Okay. 'Cause I don't
Yeah,
think
so-
that- but
Yeah.
make something.
Just something so we can kind of be like, okay, yeah,
Right.
like, or if somebody's like, we want a water slide, and we're like,
Right.
no, it's not on there. Yeah. So let's bring up property value.
Also serves as the urban renewal agency, right? So you're the board of the room. So if you want a water slide and it's not on there, then you pass a new ordinance and you say, we're gonna add a project.
Waters.
I just, isn't there, there's the one notorious one that's over on the East Coast where like a kid died every year or whatever that, I can't think of, I'll try and think of the name, email it out, but it's this notorious like, it's like a thing where it was kind of like hand built in
Right,
like, you know, the 50s or something. And it was like, it's like a set of water slides and some different stuff. And like, it was famous for just getting glossed over it and somebody, you know, like people are getting maimed.
That splash pad in Bend that is Timbertown
Yeah,
designed
so
and
cool.
environmentally
So cool.
cool. It is the coolest splash pad I've ever seen. And it is, every time I go to bed, my grandkids are like, oh, can we go? And it's totally educational, the way everything, oh, look at the water cycle, look at grandma, this is condensation, and look at, and they're like,
Philomath Vision 2050.
I know. It is the coolest. It is the coolest. I love, love, love it. So,
By 2050, we can have one of those.
yeah, that'd be cool.
That's awesome.
It's called Action Park. There's a documentary about an action park in Vernon, New Jersey. It was if you like, I mean, it's not like it's not like a crime documentary or whatever, but it was entertaining.
The more you know.
The joke is the documentary is called Class Action Park because of how well that went. So, yeah. Well, seeing as we've accomplished all of our agenda items,
Nope.
we done did it, dude.